The world plays by different rules for those with power, influence, and divine purpose. Some seem untouchable, shielded by wealth, intellect, or sheer audacity. But chosen ones, remember, power is an illusion if not rooted in truth. The anointed ones, welcome. When your adversary is making a mistake, never interrupt them. Napoleon Bonaparte, let that sink in. Some people don't hurt you by accident. What you experienced wasn't a misunderstanding or a bad day. It was deliberate, calculated, and heartless. They thought they got away with it. They believed the damage they inflicted would silence you forever. But they forgot the most fundamental law. What you send out always returns. The universe never lets an imbalance remain unchecked. Elon Musk may seem beyond reach, untouchable by karma, but no one escapes the grand design. Chosen ones, your power isn't in revenge, it's in watching the universe work. Stay patient. Watch the cycle unfold. Here's the thing. Research indicates that individuals who deceive, manipulate, and take advantage of others often end up as victims of their own actions, gradually losing their credibility, connections, and even their sense of self. As it happens, there is no retirement plan associated with being the antagonist. The same individuals who showed you no compassion are now dealing with consequences they did not anticipate. It's cause and effect, not karma. It is the result of their own conceit. And you know what? You don't even need to do anything, because when someone establishes a throne by deceit, treachery, and greed, it ultimately falls apart under them. We're delving into the specifics of how and why it's occurring now. First of all, it was a power play, and they understood precisely what they were doing. What's worse is that they understood precisely what they were doing. Every remark, every deed, and every heartless choice wasn't the result of a careless moment or an accidental slip-up. It was deliberate. Some individuals don't make errors when they injure you. They make calculations. They know just how to twist the knife to leave the deepest wound, how much they can get away with, and how much you can handle. The most hazardous ones approach you with smiles, half-truths, and just enough charm to make you question your own judgment, rather than with overt animosity. They test the waters and gradually push limits to make sure you're involved enough to stay. When they ultimately launch a full-scale attack, they do it when they think you won't defend yourself, when you're too devoted, too exhausted, or too emotionally invested to flee. This was a power play, not an emotional mishap. They want supremacy and control, or at the very least, the knowledge that they were superior. They also did it in a manner that would allow them to write you off as being too theatrical, too sensitive, or too paranoid if you ever called them out, convincing you that your suffering is an overreaction and that what you're experiencing isn't genuine is also part of the strategy. The fact that they never anticipated repercussions makes it much more terrifying. They believed they were faster than responsibility, more intelligent than karma, and impervious to the consequences of their own deeds. They believed they could treat others as they pleased and remain unaffected. However, they always undervalue one thing: time. Time prevents deceit from lasting forever, manipulation from remaining undetected, and the perpetuation of power abuse by those who gain it at the expense of others. They knew exactly what they were doing when they injured you, and they're now realizing that no one gets away with it forever. Second, the agony was the currency, not simply the objective. The purpose was the suffering, not simply something that occurred. It was the money they used to take power, not a consequence of what they did. Some individuals use pain as leverage, so they don't simply injure someone for no reason. They remove something from you when they cause you pain: your self-worth, your voice, your confidence, and your capacity for trust. And they own a part of you once they have that. They do this by keeping you in the dark, making you tread carefully, and making you doubt yourself all the time. They dig at your weaknesses, undercut you, and take little jabs at you, enough to make you question yourself, but not enough to make you turn around right away. It happens gradually, one thread at a time, until you're totally ensnared, much like a spider enveloping its victim in silk. Some of them do it because they are power-hungry, while others do it because they are hollow inside, and harming you gives them a sense of importance, control, and superiority. In any case, your suffering was never unintentional. Rather, it was their method of holding you in place, ensuring that you never became too strong, were unable to see through their deceptions, or discovered that you were always stronger than them. The irony is that, while they believed that causing you pain would help them maintain control, it really had the opposite effect, since, when properly managed, suffering can build strength. The exact thing that sharpened you, made you aware, and roused you was the same agony they used against you. In actuality, they were making you into someone they could no longer control, even if they believed they were taking something from you. The roles have now been reversed. They are no longer in charge and are beginning to realize that the suffering that once fueled their power is now returning to consume them. Third, their results are the result of a broken system rather than karma. As if some magical power is keeping score, people often declare karma is coming for them. But in reality, it's more about cause and effect than karma. People set themselves up for collapse when they cross life-burning bridges, break trust, and leave disaster in their wake. It's the inevitable result of living carelessly, not a punishment from the cosmos. They believed that there would never be consequences for how they treated others. They believed that they were impervious to criticism, and that their deceit and manipulation would never be discovered. The more they steal from others, the worse the hole they make for themselves. However, lying is like a loan that must always be paid back. They seem to be getting away with it at first. They manipulate, cheat, and lie, yet nothing seems to change. They fail to understand, however, that every action has a delayed response. Due to the fact that people don't forget, they are creating enemies, losing true friends, and developing a reputation that will ultimately suffocate them. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but ultimately the world catches on. And when it does, they end themselves alone, mistrusted, and engulfed in the same turmoil they brought about. Gone are the relationships they ruined. The individuals they relied on were no longer able to assist them. The respect they previously had has been replaced with an unavoidable notoriety. This is just the way life is. It's not some magical tale of retaliation. Poisoning people and expecting to remain healthy is not possible. You cannot expect stability by undermining other people. Their own actions eventually backfire, not because destiny chose to punish them, but rather because they established an unsustainable system. It was not karma that brought them down, but rather their confidence. Fourth, they used your brutality as a test to see whether you might be broken. Some people don't hurt you because they're reckless or emotionally out of control. They hurt you on purpose to see how much you can take before you finally snap. It's all about control, not just brutality. They wanted to see whether they could break you and change you into something more useful to them, more obedient, and more subservient. Every slight, every act of disregard, every betrayal, all of it was a test. They observed your reaction. Did you defend yourself? Have you asked them any questions? Or did you begin to doubt your own reality, shrink, and blame yourself? They were searching for it. They required obedience, not affection. They needed to know that you would dance when they tugged the strings, that you would remain silent when they hushed you, and that you would either disintegrate or crawl back when they pushed you to the brink. Additionally, everything deteriorated if you didn't. They became worse the more you fought, since your strength was an issue. Their authority was threatened by your capacity to endure without cracking. They needed you weak, fragile, and terrified, Because a person who refuses to be dominated is hazardous to someone who feeds on manipulation. But here's where they miscalculated. They imagined that agony would make you yield, that if they pushed hard enough, you would crumble. They didn't think it would make you stronger. They never imagined that their brutality would make you more resilient, that their mind tricks would hone your intuition, or that their efforts to destroy you would instead strengthen you. Since they have nothing left to use against you if you have withstood their worst, they are now the ones who are scared. To check whether you may be broken, they put you through a test. They wanted you to pass their exam, but you didn't. Number 5. Their worst fear is that they never thought you would get better. They didn't think you would get back up. They relied on your weariness, your quiet, and the irreversible harm they inflicted. The only thing that matters to someone like these is whether you remain down, not how much they damage you. The concept that the suffering would leave you weak forever was what gave them power, not the actual anguish. They placed all of their money on your proposal. They believed you would never have the strength to rebuild yourself after everything they had done to you. They believed that you would remain lost, damaged, and trapped in the self they constructed of you. One who doubted everything, one that never again had complete faith in your own abilities. The truth is, they weren't only attempting to harm you, they were attempting to destroy you, the self-assured, independent, and confident version of yourself. They wanted a smaller, quieter, and more manageable version to take its place, and maybe they were successful for a while. Perhaps you doubted yourself, lost hope, or perhaps believed they were correct about you. Then, however, something changed. You began to awaken. You began to see through the delusion, and you changed rather than were destroyed by what transpired. You became stronger, sharper, and more conscious than before. Because they no longer have control as a result of your healing, they are now terrified. They spent their time attempting to shatter someone who wasn't supposed to be broken, as seen by your recovery. They lost because of your tenacity. This is their worst nightmare. You leaving, starting again, and succeeding in ways they never imagined conceivable since they vanished the instant you ceased to be their victim. 6th, you're witnessing them fall apart when they gambled that you would destroy yourself. They were putting you in a position to fail, not simply to harm you. They deliberately tried to drive you over the line with their treatment of you, which went beyond simple cruelty. In order to defend what they did to you, they needed you to respond, to snap, to strike out. They weren't just wishing for your suffering. They were banking on your demise. They wanted to be able to look at you and say, "See, this is why I treated them that way." They believed that by destroying you on an emotional, mental, and maybe even bodily level, you would fall into a realm so dark that you would either lose your reputation or kill yourself. Perhaps they thought that you would act out, spiral, become resentful and vindictive, and lash out in ways that would make them seem to be the victim. Maybe they wanted you to break so terribly that you'd prove them correct, that you'd never rise above what they did to you. But here's the bit they never saw coming. You didn't self-destruct. You didn't let their actions define you. You didn't turn into the person they tried to mold you into. Instead of becoming the villain they could point to, you became something far worse in their eyes. You became free. They attempted to inject you with poison, but you refused to bear it. You improved, you grew, you healed, and now they are the ones falling apart. They are being caught in their falsehoods. Their deception is no longer effective, and the harm they inflicted is coming full circle, but not on you. While they're trapped in the mess they made, they watch you go on, prospering and untouchable. They bet you would break all that time, but they never considered the consequences if you didn't. 7th, they never imagined that the roles would be reversed. Their conceit was their weakness. The irony of arrogance is that it gives individuals a sense of invincibility until they collapse. Those who attempted to shatter you didn't just think they were in charge. They thought they would always be in power. They were reckless because they were so sure of their capacity to control, trick, and manipulate. They began to push things too far, make blunders, and reveal themselves. That's the problem with hubris. It blinds people. They thought they were the sharpest person in the room, always one step ahead and always in charge. They believed that you would never awaken, that you would always be ruled by them, and that you would always follow their laws. They overplayed their hand and underestimated you as a result of that belief. They believed you would remain silent, damaged, and caught in their web indefinitely. They believed you would never realize the truth, never piece things together, and never have the courage to leave for good. And since arrogance not only makes people harsh, but also makes them careless, they were putting themselves in danger of failing while they were preoccupied with feeling untouchable. It gives them the impression that they may continue to lie without being discovered. It leads them to believe they may continue to harm others without facing repercussions. They believe they are too strong to fail, until they do. The roles have now been reversed. They've fallen into the same mental tricks they used on you. They are being completely engulfed by the mayhem they caused. They created a society where control, deceit, and manipulation were the norm. The trouble with creating a world like that is that you ultimately have to live in it as well, and there is no way out this time. Eighth, they believed you weren't observing them, yet their disguise kept sliding. They liked to think they were better at concealing than they really were. They were in total control of how others saw them, as charming, reliable, and untouchable. However, what is the reality? They acted as if their mask was solid. But it was never. It kept slipping. Sometimes their actual character showed through. A casual remark tinged with malice, a brief outburst of anger when things didn't go their way, or a moment of apathy while someone else was in pain. Perhaps it had to do with the way they spoke about others behind their backs, the way their tales never quite fit together, or the way they reacted when they didn't get what they wanted. Subtle, but still there. Even if you didn't always know what you were looking at, you noticed them. You saw. Here's where they took a risk, however, assuming that you wouldn't believe in yourself and that, even if you saw those fleeting glimpses, you would dismiss them, doubt yourself, or tell yourself they weren't real. They hoped that their manipulation would be more effective than your intuition, and for a while, it could have been. Perhaps you assumed the worst about them. They wanted you to examine yourself rather than them, so maybe you convinced yourself that you were overanalyzing. They no longer made an effort to conceal anything, since they were so sure of their abilities to steer the conversation. They believed they had you tricked, but they never understood that you were observing, learning, and making connections. And that was all once you realized what was actually going on and saw the pattern. It shattered the enchantment. Since you're no longer playing along, it doesn't matter that they're the only ones still acting. Their allure has worn off, and their justifications have failed. The ninth point is that you were always planning your escape, and were never weak. They saw your patience as passive, and your quiet as capitulation. They believed they had you just the way they wanted you, too reliant, too afraid, and too shattered to ever leave. They never realized, however, that you were strategic rather than weak. Not only were you passively experiencing their treatment, but you were also observing, learning, and making calculations. You were analyzing their conduct, looking for trends, and determining just who and what you were up against. You were aware that responding on the spur of the moment would just provide them with additional evidence against you. You thus played it wisely, rather than wasting energy on meaningless conflicts. They anticipated a breakdown, a spectacular altercation, and a fervent request that they change. They anticipated self-destruction, resentment, or rage, anything that would justify their dominance over you. But you didn't make them feel that way. Rather, you disengaged, which is the one thing they never believed you were capable of. And you performed your departure perfectly when the moment was appropriate. Just distance, height, and total removal. No fanfare, no warning. You left behind more than just them. You left behind the version of you that they could access, that they controlled, and that they believed would never outgrow them. Gone is that version of you. While they were busy assuming they had you imprisoned, you were quietly making your escape. On your terms, in your own strength, and without ever looking back. Now, they're the ones fighting, scurrying, and trying to find out how they lost control. But it's too late. Number 12. The fallout isn't just theirs, it's generational. People like this don't just destroy themselves. They set fire to everything attached to them. They think their actions exist in a vacuum, that their cruelty, manipulation, and recklessness won't bleed into the next generation. But the truth is, their choices don't die with them. They spread. The pain they cause doesn't just disappear. It becomes inherited trauma. The lies they told don't just vanish. They become the foundation of broken families. The damage they inflicted doesn't just stop. It echoes through their bloodline in ways they never considered. Their children grow up in the wreckage of their decisions, forced to navigate the consequences of choices they never made, carrying wounds that weren't theirs to bear, learning love through the lens of betrayal, neglect, and emotional starvation. Watching patterns repeat, broken marriages, shattered trust, cycles of abuse, because no one ever stopped it at the root. And it's not just their immediate family. Their name carries weight. Their legacy becomes a warning, not a source of pride. People remember who they were, what they did, and how they moved through life. And when that name is spoken, it's not in admiration, it's in caution. That's the price they pay, not just in their own suffering, but in the generational debt they leave behind. The pain they refuse to face gets passed down like an inheritance no one wants. And unless someone, somewhere, makes the choice to break the cycle, their poison outlives them. They thought they were only destroying relationships in the moment. They never realized they were cursing their own bloodline. Number 13. Their mind is the real hell, and it's eating them alive. They may walk around pretending they're untouchable, but the truth? They are prisoners in their own mind. You might think they got away with everything, the lies, the betrayals, the destruction, but no one escapes who they really are. Their mind is a battlefield, and the enemy is themselves. They can distract themselves for a while, bury themselves in new relationships, new manipulations, or temporary highs, but eventually, the silence catches up to them, and in that silence, the truth screams. The things they've done replay like a horror movie, over and over again. Every person they've hurt, every lie they've told, every bridge they burned. It all lingers beneath the surface, twisting their perception, making them paranoid, restless, never at peace. They trust no one because deep down they know they aren't trustworthy. They assume people are out to get them because they've spent their whole life deceiving and using others. They question loyalty because they've never been loyal themselves. They thought power and control would give them security, but all it did was make them a prisoner to their own fears. They can't relax because they're always calculating, always wondering who's about to expose them, who's figured them out, who's planning to do to them what they did to others. They're constantly running, not from the world, but from the weight of their own actions. And that's the cruel irony. They built their own hell. No outside force had to punish them. No divine justice had to strike them down. They did it to themselves. Their own mind is devouring them from the inside out, making sure that even in a room full of people, even in moments of so-called victory, they are never truly free. Number 14. You weren't the one who lost. They were. They thought they won. They thought they crushed you, stripped you of everything, left you with nothing but pain. But what they didn't realize is that you weren't the one who lost. They were. Because look at what you walked away with: wisdom, strength, clarity, and freedom. You gained knowledge they'll never have, the ability to see through manipulation, the understanding of what real love and respect look like, the experience of surviving something that was meant to destroy you. You didn't just survive, you transformed. And them? They lost everything that ever mattered. They lost their credibility. People have seen them for who they really are. Their charm doesn't work the same way anymore. Their words don't carry the same weight. The web of lies they spun, it's tangled around their own throat now. They lost relationships. The bridges they burned can't be rebuilt. The people they used no longer answer their calls. The ones they took for granted, they moved on. And every time they try to replace what they lost, it slips through their fingers, because nothing real stays in the hands of someone who never knew how to value it. They lost their power over you, and that's the one that stings the most. You're no longer emotionally chained to them, no longer looking for their approval, no longer stuck in their cycle. They don't get to control your thoughts, your feelings, your decisions anymore. They can only watch from the outside, knowing they will never have that access to you again. And worst of all, they lost themselves, because people like this don't just ruin relationships. They ruin their own identity. They spent so long building a false version of themselves, one that was manipulative, ruthless, and self-serving, that now that's all they have left. They are alone, unfulfilled, and empty. So while they may have thought they walked away victorious, the truth is simple. You won, they lost, and they know it. At the end of the day, justice doesn't always come in the way people expect. There may never be an apology. There may never be a grand moment of reckoning where they admit what they did. But none of that matters, because the truth has already played out. They thought they had the upper hand, but life has a way of balancing the scales. The pain they caused, it came back in ways they never saw coming. The power they abused, it slipped through their fingers the moment they took it for granted. And you, the one they underestimated, the one they tried to break, you became everything they swore you never would. You didn't just heal, you elevated. You didn't just survive, you outgrew them. You didn't just walk away, you walked into something better. And now, the only thing they have left is the mess they made, the reputation they destroyed, and the regret they can't erase. That's the final truth. You won, without even trying, because your greatest revenge was never about proving a point. It was about becoming untouchable. No bitterness, no obsession with payback. Just peace, wisdom, and the undeniable fact that their biggest punishment is watching you thrive. If this message hit deep, if you felt every word, then don't just keep it to yourself. Let's make sure more people hear it. Hit that subscribe button, because this is just the beginning. There's more truth, more revelations, and more power coming your way. Like this video to let me know this resonated with you. Drop a comment and tell me your thoughts, your experiences, your victories, your realizations, and most importantly, share this with someone who needs to hear it. You never know who's out there right now feeling lost, feeling broken, thinking they're the ones who lost when in reality, they're in the middle of their comeback. This is more than just a video. This is a movement, and you're a part of it. Let's keep growing, keep leveling up, and keep proving that nothing and no one can stop us. See you in the next one. God bless you.